Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker is directed by J.J. Abrams and is the finale of the new Star Wars trilogy. All the same cast are back with a couple of new people and some old people, and the plot basically is that the Emperor is back and they have to stop him. I'm not a huge Star Wars fan. I did not grow up with the original trilogy, and I didn't sit down and really watch them all the way through until maybe like 5 years ago. I liked them. They were good, and The Empire Strikes Back is the best one. I saw the prequels in the cinema when they came out. The first two are bad, except for the music and the way that Natalie Portman looks in Attack of the Clones. And Revenge of the Sith is very watchable. Deeply flawed, but I still kind of like it. I love The Force Awakens, and I love The Last Jedi. Not perfect movies, but pretty damn good ones. My favourite of all of them is probably The Force Awakens, so I was excited to hear that JJ was coming back to direct this one. The last movie left off in a good place, and The Rise of Skywalker had one of the most satisfying trailers that I've ever seen. Which is why I hate to say that The Rise of Skywalker was such a disappointment, and that is most entirely due to the story that this film is trying to tell. I'm going to get into spoilers soon, but first I'll say that though this film doesn't seem to actively be trying to give a big fuck you to The Last Jedi and the controversial decisions made in that story, it does feel like someone trying to course correct to the ending that they had in mind and ruining character growth and interesting setups from the film before. I laid out my history as a watcher of Star Wars movies to try to get across where I'm coming from with this. I'm not a lifelong fan. I appreciate what Star Wars did and why the original hit so big when it did and how it changed the landscape of films and merchandising and all that. I'm coming at this as a fan of this new trilogy. I don't care about comments like, but in the original trilogy Darth Vader turns out to be Luke Skywalker's father even though Obi-Wan tells him that Darth Vader killed his father. I don't care what the original trilogy did. That was 43 years ago, cinematic language evolves, and at the very least, all the people who contributed to the writing of these films should have been able to learn from the past and bang out a rough roadmap of where they wanted these films to go. Even if Rian Johnson came out and said, fuck it, I'm going to do my own thing, he still left off in a place that they could have gone almost anywhere with it, and seeing what they chose to do shows a serious lack of imagination and understanding of how to create a satisfying finale. So spoilers from here. When I saw that the Emperor would be coming back, I thought that's weird. Not sure that's a good idea, but I'm intrigued to see how they brought him back and what he's going to do now. What's his relationship to Kylo Ren, the other villain of the piece, going to be? Because of that, I started to get a sinking feeling pretty much from the opening crawl, and it continued through the vague revelations of where the Emperor was and how he came back, and that he was secretly behind everything, which doesn't work because it wasn't set up at all who Snoke really was and what the Emperor plans to do now. So that sinking feeling continued through most of the film. There'd be moments where I'd get a little bit excited, but that feeling would get squashed pretty quickly. We finally get to see what I have wanted to see since The Force Awakens. The three lead characters sharing screen time together. The one thing that the first two movies nailed was everything about Adam Driver as Kylo Ren and the characters of Rey, Poe and Finn and their chemistry. And what do they do with them now that they finally have them together? They send them on a go to this place, find this thing, figure out the clues so you can go to another place to find another thing that'll lead to the other place mission. It feels like a bad version of an Indiana Jones movie or a Dan Brown book. Lots of talk about some guy we've never heard of and will never see who's looking for something and being looked for by Luke Skywalker off screen between movies which we never heard of before and will also never see. It felt like a bad TV show. The ancient Sith dagger and the Sith Wayfinder are terrible MacGuffins, and the edges of the ancient dagger covered in Sith text being the same shape as the outline of the wreckage of the second Death Star when observed from a particular point is so stupid that I could not believe it as it was playing out on screen. The whole thing is horribly paced, with a lot happening in a film that is long but feels too short. When Rey and Kylo Ren have their big final lightsaber fight among the waves, it felt like, oh wait, is this the big fight? Oh, it is, really? This is the big fight? Wow, now? Okay. There is so much plot crammed into this film that no scene or sequence or character moment or action beat has any time to breathe, which means that there are no great character moments or suspenseful scenes or emotional setups or payoffs. So much happens that I feel like it's quite possible that I missed a lot. I didn't get to feel the themes, I just caught hints of what they were going for in some of the characters' lines of dialogue. The big moments that are supposed to be sad or epic or emotional in any way just land with a dull thud. C-3PO losing his memory and Chewbacca dying, I didn't feel that. And then it gets undone, so it didn't really mean anything anyway. I didn't buy Kylo Ren's redemption for a second. Rey hearing the voices of the old Jedi, didn't care. The people of the galaxy showing up last minute to help win the big space battle, I didn't care. For God's sake, the music wasn't even strong enough or epic enough even to try and trick me into thinking that I cared about anything that was happening. Some of the fan service in this was truly awful, the worst of which was absolutely Maz Kanata showing up to give Chewie the medal that he didn't get at the end of the first film. Maybe at some point it was supposed to be Leia who gives it to him, and I think that would have worked really well, but they couldn't do that, so they should have cut it. I'm sure a lot of the flaws of this film will be blamed on having to work around the death of Carrie Fisher, and maybe they were, but all I know is what I see up there on the screen. Rey turning out to be the Emperor's granddaughter came out of nowhere and was so lame, and don't get me wrong, I love the Emperor as much as the next guy. He was awesome and over-the-top evil in Return of the Jedi, and he was a lot of fun in Revenge of the Sith, but every scene with him in this is terrible because he's just throwing out random dialogue about what's going on and what's going to happen. He wants Rey killed because of reasons, and then he wants Rey to kill him so he can take over her body somehow. And then suddenly he's able to suck energy out of Rey and Kylo Ren so he can heal himself. And I was sitting there and constantly saying, wait, what? It also doesn't help that he keeps repeating lines from the previous movies, and I hate that they keep calling him Palpatine instead of the Emperor because it strengthens the connection to the prequels in my mind, which is something that The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi seem to actively be trying to avoid, which was a very good choice. I don't know why they brought the Emperor back. I didn't know where it was going to go after the events of The Last Jedi, but the stakes and the threat was still high. The First Order was still massive and clearly winning the war. There were only a handful of rebels left, and Kylo Ren was finally set up as the big bad of the series. Then the opening scene of this film has the Emperor back, and he's given the orders, so Kylo Ren's back to being the underboss, and he has millions of Star Destroyers, and they all have weapons that blow up planets. And I don't care how he got them. Well, maybe I care a little bit, but it was all needless and just added a whole bunch of extra shit to cram into the runtime and muddle the storytelling. Adam Driver was absolutely the MVP in a trilogy that was full of great characters and performances, but he's so wasted here. They bring him back to the way he was at the beginning of the last movie and ignore the rest, so it's still him and Rey trying to convert each other, and when he finally turns good, I don't believe his redemption for a second. When he and Rey kiss, it was another one of those moments. And there were a lot of them. Like, was this what we were supposed to think was going on this whole time? I mean, I'm sure there are a ton of fans and fan fiction writers out there who will be delighted by this, but it doesn't mean it makes any sense. I always liked Donald Gleason as General Hux, but he's out, and the reason given for him turning spy again is so lame. Richard E. Grant is great in the role he plays, but why did we need a new Grand Moff Tarkin type? We're left with enemies who have no emotional connection to any of our heroes. The Knights of Ren don't really do anything, so they're lame too. Finn was also pretty wasted as a character. There was one moment that actually got me excited where he thinks he's going to die and he wants to confess something to Rey, but he's cut off before he gets the chance. I thought it was going to be a confession of love, which in cinematic language is the only thing that it could have been given the circumstances. Guy thinks he's about to die and just has to get this information to the girl, and it feels like it was adequately set up and would have made the film much better. I've seen online since that apparently he was going to reveal that he's force sensitive, which is a term that I hate, by the way, and if that was the case, that's not the way to get that information across. All of this, of course, is pointless because other than a couple of references to the fact that Finn has some kind of secret that he hasn't revealed to Rey, we never find out what it was. If there's some deleted scene where it is revealed, then they should have removed the references to that scene that were in the final product. They introduced an intriguing new character that they don't really do anything with, and a boring new one who someone somewhere thinks should have their own spin-off for some reason, given her conversation with Lando at the end of the film. Rose Tico doesn't get a lot of screen time, and a lot of people are upset by that, and I'm not one of those people. Rose was an annoying character and only succeeded in reminding me of how good the chemistry between John Boyega and Daisy Ridley was in The Force Awakens, and how I had to put up with her instead. I like the idea of Kylo Ren and Rey being able to fight even though they're in different places and objects from each of their environments keeps moving between the two. It was cool, and a good progression of the ideas that were set up in the last film, unlike Rey now having healing powers, which comes completely out of nowhere. Like, the film is well acted, but it's hard to care when it's in the service of this story. It also looks good, I guess, but the visuals have nothing as memorable as The Force Awakens, or as striking as The Last Jedi. And maybe it was just my screening, but the place where the Emperor hangs out, and where the climax of the movie happens, was a bit too dark, which made it hard to make out and generic looking, which was very anticlimactic. There were some funny scenes that I genuinely did laugh at, and that was mostly things that Poe Dameron was doing. There's a bit where he's holding a torch next to a lightsaber, that was fun, and his reaction when Hux turns out to be the spy was one of the only highlights. The all is lost moment comes during the climax. Kylo Ren's been incapacitated, Rey is physically drained, the rebel ships are losing, and the Emperor is powerful again and shooting lightning into the air, which actually does look pretty cool. And then what happens? They try to copy this scene from Avengers Endgame.
Captain Sam, can you hear me? On your left.
Thousands of ships being flown by people from all over the galaxy show up to save the day, but it falls so flat because we don't know who any of these people are, other than one who was set up briefly earlier on, who we still don't really care about. One of the great flaws of the original trilogy, and now this one, is that I have no idea what any of these people's lives would be like if they weren't at war. So I have no picture in my mind of what they would do if they ever won it. For example, in Harry Potter, the books, not the movies, I can easily imagine what Harry and Ron and Hermione's lives would be like after they defeated Voldemort. And because of that, we feel what they're fighting for on a more personal level, and there's an enormous sense of relief when they win. When this film ends, it just feels like these characters are purposeless, and without the war, what do they have to live for? I don't think that J.J. Abrams was actively trying to give a big fuck you to Rian Johnson and fix the mistakes of The Last Jedi. I think he probably had some vision of what he wanted to happen from when he made The Force Awakens, and he tried to course correct as quickly as possible in this film, which is why the Emperor's here and Rey's actual parentage reveal feels so cheap. Whether intended or not, what Abrams chose to do with these characters in this film absolutely does away with their progression in The Last Jedi. The Last Jedi was all about our characters coming to grips with themselves and their place in this world, and that's shown by their journey, and more specifically by the choices that they make at the end of the film. Finn decides to care about the cause and not just staying as far away from the First Order and keeping himself and Rey safe, and he finally becomes an actual rebel.
Rebel scum.
Poe learns how to stop being so hot-headed and learns how to be a leader so he can eventually take over from Leia. Kylo Ren seemed like he was going to turn good when he killed Snoke, but then doubled down on the evil, cementing himself as the big bad guy of the trilogy. Remember these moments?
No quarter. No prisoners.
And when I kill you, I will have killed the last Jedi.
I'll destroy her. And you. And all of it.
Blow that piece of junk out of the sky! More!
Yeah, as far as this film's concerned, he never acted like that, you know, evil, bloodthirsty, crazy guy. And Rey being confronted with the knowledge that she has no special parents or bloodline and that her place in this world is to be chosen only by her, chooses not to take Kylo Ren's hand, symbolizing her resolutely refusing the dark side in favor of the light. Again, this film ignores that, and she's back to where she started at the beginning of The Last Jedi. This film undoes Rey and Kylo Ren's journeys with all the subtlety of, well, George Lucas writing romantic dialogue.
Now that I'm with you again, I'm in agony. The closer I get to you, the worse it gets. The thought of not being with you, I can't breathe. You are in my very soul.
I'm gonna give The Rise of Skywalker a C. I actually don't hate this movie. It was just such a letdown. You know, if it wasn't the last one with these characters, I probably would have liked it just fine. It wouldn't have been great, but it would have been passable. But this was it. They didn't stick the landing, and The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi suffer because of it. I'm sure in the decades to come, people will look back at these films in much the same way they do the original trilogy, with the absence of hype and anticipation and expectation smoothing over the story inconsistencies and the other flaws. But I don't care about that right now, and I must say that the revelations about Luke and Vader and Leia may have come out of nowhere or contradicted information given previously, but they didn't contradict other more satisfying and character-defining revelations that had come before. I wanted to go see this again before I did my review, but when it came to it, there just wasn't really anything in this that I was excited to go back and experience again, and I am amazed by that. Thank you very much for watching my review. Please like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter at @LukeToTheMovies. It all helps me out, helps the channel grow. Leave a comment down below, let me know if you've seen Rise of Skywalker, what you thought of it, if you liked it, disliked it, agree or disagree with any of my points, and I'm sure you'll have some comments of your own. I'll be back soon with more reviews, and I will see you then.